So, welcome. And learning labs are a way of getting better and creating culture of collaborative learning. So, if you guys all have the learning lab kind of note-taking sheet, we'll kind of start just looking at the sheet together. And then Jen and I did, not that we want this like really formal or anything, but we kind of put this Prezi together just to kind of keep us on topic with what we wanted to say today, kind of with our sheet, the journey to now, kind of where we started, because we are in like a coaching partnership, so that's also kind of why I'm facilitating the lab. So just to remember everything we wanted to say from where we started up onto where we're at now and what you guys are going to see today going in and observing. So
can I chime in?
Yeah.
It's sort of one of those things that you have the intention, or you think you're going to get this out of something, and then it completely goes a different way. And so that really helps us to stay focused on each step we took, because those are not the steps I ever would have thought we would have taken.
So if you look at the focus question for the learning lab, it's, does mindful and appropriate peer feedback increase student achievement? So that's kind of what you're going to be looking for when you go into the learning lab today. And looking, the students actually, as soon as you walk in, will be getting into, with their partner, doing feedback with their partner. So basically I'll just kind of go over the norms right away to get started. So we don't forget to do those. I know that kind of comes towards the end, but I'll just go over them right away. So maintain a positive attitude and respect for the lab host. So for Jen, avoid being a distraction in the classroom. No talking to students or other teachers during the observation. And please save conversations so you can hear and participate. I guess obviously no side conversations if Jen is doing the lesson. Pretty much when we walk in, the students are, like I said, going to be getting with their partner, they're going to be doing the feedback, but also don't go up to them and ask, oh, what are you doing? And I know you guys have participated in a learning lab before, but we'll just continue reviewing the norms. Stay close to the action so you can see and hear what the students are doing as learners. So you're going to be wanting to listen, are they providing feedback to each other? Record detailed notes that are aligned with the observation to use during the debriefing session. So those are basically the norms, if you guys could just remember them when we go into Jen's room. Okay, and then you guys will see the form, and there's kind of the note-taking tool. You can use the back to take notes on if you have a notebook, whatever you guys feel most comfortable. We did kind of divide it up a little bit differently from maybe what you're used to if you've been to a learning lab. We kind of put a little bit of space for round one, maybe if you want to jot some notes down for I saw, I heard, maybe round two, I think, because I saw, I wonder, if you want to kind of jot notes that way. And also kind of underneath the focus question, the look fors. So that's kind of maybe something that's a little bit different when you're in observing. And we'll talk about the look fors and stuff also as we go through. Okay, so we'll get started kind of, if you look at the little map, the journey to now.
Maybe even if you put your computer in between
Karen and Liz.
and
Okay.
I'll put mine.
Kind of like this.
Here.
Share.
And then we can still.
And do you have yours in present mode, Jen? Hopefully everything's the same on it.
I don't know, maybe not. I don't think so.
Let's see. I think it is.
Is it?
You just
Okay.
do the arrow.
Oh,
Okay. So basically, we just kind of wanted to map this out in our mind, so that's kind of what this is. And so it all kind of started with growth mindset.
yeah, I felt like growth mindset is starting to be kind of like a cliche term used, and so I wanted to find out more about it. I knew about the research and about the brain, you know, having a fixed mindset, having a growth mindset. I knew the general term and what it meant, but then from there the opportunity to go see Trevor Reagan came up. Oops. Okay.
And so this was at NICC in Calmer, Trevor Reagan, that was in September.
Yeah, so then after I had a conversation with him about growth mindset and about an activity he had done with a teacher in Australia, a bug activity. Her students were younger than mine, but I thought this doesn't have to be even a bug, it could be anything with any age, different from writing. So, because we're giving feedback to each other all the time. We give feedback to each other as co-teachers, you give feedback as spouses, as parents, the list goes on. But I thought this was a neat way to teach specific things, being kind, being specific, and being helpful when you're giving feedback. Not only did I feel that the third graders over the past couple of years have done maybe a poor job in the revision stage, but also I started to realize that their brains aren't trained to be that mindful. They don't have the stamina to sit there with a partner. I mean, I've shared with a couple of people that it always seems like after the revision stage, they're done in 5 minutes. We're done, and there's not one mark. There's not one improvement that's been made. And so I thought, well, I think I need to stop thinking about the first 30 days and diving right into the revision process at my level and bring it down to them and talk to them about what does it mean to give advice or give an opinion or give feedback to a friend or to a classmate. What does that look like? What does it sound like? What does it mean for them? Well, it increases their achievement. So I started there, which I feel like the students I've had coming in and the students that have gone to 4th grade have never had that, and I've never given them that. So that is where I came up with the idea with the Learning Lab to be about growth mindset. I wasn't so much thinking about mindfulness at this time. Then I was at Luther at an advisory board meeting where we were talking about mental health. And from there came up an email. Tara Drew was supposed to be at the meeting and she couldn't. She had sent an email, so it was shared how the middle school is having a book study on mindful teaching and teaching mindfulness. And I thought, oh my gosh, you have to have this in order to have growth mindset. So then there was like that piece that I hadn't thought of and that I didn't pick up on anyway at listening to Trevor Reagan. So then I joined the book study, and from there I found that's really where you train your brain to stay in the moment, stay focused. Even when you're having a conversation with somebody, you're not doing something and talking to them, sort of listening, sort of not. They're kind of questioning whether you're listening or whether you're not listening. And I feel like even as adults, it seems like the way of the world. Like we have so much on our plates that we're always in several moments. And so I thought, I think we need to maybe start with some meditation in my room. So we started with the Headspace app. Is that next? Yep.
Yeah.
And I thought, I think we just need to, kids with technology, with all the things that they're playing on the iPad and phones and computers and other devices, I think that we're already creating children to be worse than what we are. We've kind of evolved into this over time, and I feel like they're just starting off this way, where they're in several moments and they're not in the moment. And so do they, when I look at the Daily 5, do they have stamina to sit with their partner? Do we teach them how to do that? How do they go from all these really fast-paced activities and things that they're doing, even in school, not only home, but then transfer that back to, now you're going to revise your partner's paper. Time out, slow down, I just want you in this moment now. And so through our Headspace app, so we did meditation over 10 days, and they just learned how to concentrate on their breathing. So they just learned to not be distracted by sounds. They also learned that, and I learned about this first and started meditating before I did this with my class. So I so I could model this. They also learned that it's okay to have thoughts pop in your head. You know, when you're having a conversation with somebody, it might spark a connection and you might think, oh, I forgot to load the dishwasher, or you know, something random. And it's okay to acknowledge any thoughts that you have, but then to just bring it back to the breath. So when you're revising with your partner, it's okay to be thinking about the basketball game you have tonight, or how you just broke up with your boyfriend, you know, thinking more at your level is, or whatever else you're dealing with in your life. It's okay to acknowledge that, but then what's my purpose right now? Where is my mind supposed to be right now? Oh, it's with my partner. And why am I with my partner? To help them improve their peace so they can achieve and they can grow.
And actually, the book study, we started the book study thinking, oh, this will help us like with the learning lab and with growth mindset, but then actually the more we've been reading the book, it's like, oh, this is actually helping obviously with teaching and with our own lives, like the mindfulness and with a lot of other things. So, and it's amazing just watching the students, just as me as an outsider, watching them the first time. It's like a 10-day free trial, kind of the Headspace app. And the first day, it's just like the breathing, and of course, like one of the students, like you can shut your eyes, you don't have to, and she's on her ball, just like, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so hard to concentrate. But now, like day 10, it's so quiet, and you can hear some of them, like really actually focused and concentrating. So this then brought us to how mindful are the students, and just thinking, okay, how do we even know, how do we show their growth basically for the beginning to the end? So we were trying to think of how do you do like a post-assessment basically on their mindfulness. So this was basically our observation of pre-teaching the Headspace, the book study.
Using the term mindful.
Yeah.
I felt like I was using the term growth mindset, but never really.
So I just came in after Jen and I kind of created this little mindful form and took this video. Should I just show it to one so
sure.
It's not like two going on?
Oh, yeah.
So here they're peer editing, they're revising, right?
Yeah.
Personal awareness.
Students open my doors too.
And so the interesting thing is, right after this then, we had them raise their hand and we're like, so how do you think you and your partner did? Were you mindful? Were you on task? Oh yeah, everybody raised their hand. We're like, really? Wow. You all were on task after I literally just took this video clip. Okay, so. And so then we also did, like, this was kind of our pre-assessment also. We had the students fill out kind of this survey, and this was kind of our scale, 1 to 3 rating. Like, my partner was distracted, my partner was mindful, and then this was just kind of one example, and you can kind of see over here kind of where they fell. And so now,
And I think at the beginning they were thinking mindful also meant my friend's not getting up to get a drink, they're not going to the bathroom, they're not sharpening their pencil, they're here with me. And I think they thought that meant mindful. Like, they're where they're supposed to be. Well, their body might be where they're supposed to be, but their mind is certainly not where it's supposed to be.
so they haven't taken the post yet, so they'll do that next week probably, or
Yep.
the following with Thanksgiving.
So they'll have the same, even though this is a different activity, we chose the same partners that they had from the video you just saw, from this survey.
So basically why the reason we kind of decided to focus on peer feedback was just because this is kind of peer feedback. If you look at this little scale here, this is feedback, and coworkers, friends, peer feedback gets the least amount of attention when we look at feedback, and more attention needs to be given to this part of the equation. And so basically we just kind of wrote we need to work to teach students how to be mindful when giving feedback to one another.
And then another extension to that, which Trevor Reagan does talk about, is your feedback has to be purposeful. You did a great job. That word, nice word. Or you should put great here. You know, we showed the students several videos of other classrooms giving feedback, and one of them was entirely all great things. They were kind. I suppose you could say they were helpful, but never did they say why their partner should make those changes, and never did the partner ask, why do you think I should do that? And so that was interesting too.
And if you think of like peer observations, like the kind, the helpful, that feedback is easy. It's the specific feedback that's more difficult. And this is also, we just wanted to share, this is kind of a little, research. Oh, I was going to start this at, what did I say? 132. Just a little study that was done on peer feedback that was just interesting. I'll speed it ahead here.
So a really interesting study on this was done by Barbara White and John Frederickson, and they conducted a research study with 12 classes of students learning physics. Students were divided into two groups. There was a control and an experimental group. Both groups were taught force and motion. But the control group spent portions of each lesson discussing the work, while the experimental group spent the same amount of time engaging in peer and self-assessment. And the results were dramatic. The experimental group outperformed the control group on 3 different assessments, and the greatest gains were made by those who were previously low achieving. After the low achievers spent time discussing, assessing themselves and others on these different assessments, they started behaving like the highest achievers. And the researchers concluded that low achievers are often thought of as lacking ability or being slow, but what they actually found was that they're often low achieving just because they don't know what's important and what they're meant to be paying attention to. And the 7th graders in the study scored at higher levels than AP.
We just thought that was interesting because it just was
Right.
an interesting research study.
And I like her last line where it says it wasn't that they weren't kind of holding their end of the deal. It was they had never been the cards to even deal. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel like finally in my 4th year in 3rd grade or 5th, I don't know. It feels like all this time I've been thinking that they already had these tools. And then I think, and if I thought that, then probably every grade after me thought that. And so then they get to you and it's just like, why can't you do this? You've done this for how many years? So.
And it reminds me of, I went to a conference once and a teacher who was presenting said something so simple and it kind of stuck and I just thought, oh, that is so simple, why don't, it was for behavior management, but she just said, if you expect, you have to teach. So if you expect it, you have to teach it, because don't expect the students to do something that you don't teach. So I just thought, oh, yeah, even something as simple as lining up, if I expect them to do it, I guess we have to practice it. So it just clicked with me because I thought, oh, I'm expecting them to do that even though they're in 6th grade. I just expected them to know it, but they obviously didn't. So I need to teach it. So then that did bring us to peer feedback during the revision process. So I know that Jen's really focused on the writing process and specifically the revision part, and versus even editing versus revision, that also was confusing for students. And so they didn't know how to give specific feedback to their peers, and they were not obviously being mindful. So that's something, this is going to be a little bit different because on last Friday, just so you guys could kind of see everything in one snapshot with peer feedback, they were just given a white sheet of paper and told to draw their favorite bug. And so they were kind of like, okay, what? And so they kept coming up and saying, can I add color? Or should I add color? And just said, draw your favorite bug. And so some did add color, some erased and kept, like they didn't know what to do. And we just said, draw your favorite bug. And so then when they handed it in, then we kind of told them through the mini lessons, like, we're going to be working on feedback, it's going to be kind, specific, helpful, and then we did mini lessons on, like, one on kind, one on specific, one on helpful, and then one to kind of wrap it up. And so today, you guys are going to see them do, they're going to get with a partner that they had for when they were doing their personal narratives, like the same partner where they were going under the drawer. And so they're going to be giving feedback that's kind, hopefully, specific, and helpful on the bug. And then they're going to be doing their like published piece with the bug. So you kind of can see students giving feedback and kind of a final draft all in one sitting, versus if we did it with writing, you would obviously be able to see it all in one sitting. So that's kind of where it brought us, so instantly it brought us then to our focus question then, does mindful and appropriate peer feedback increase student achievement? And knowing we wanted to use the bug activity as our ending assessment, we did know that all along from Trevor Reagan, so that was kind of our backwards design. So we knew that was the end in mind, that was our ending piece. We just didn't exactly know.
Yeah, I think at first it was
Yeah.
more, I can listen to my partner, I can help my partner, I can give my partner great ideas, which are all absolutely what needs to happen, but it needs to even start before that. Like, how can I bring myself to sit here with my partner? What's my purpose? Yeah. Definitely more specific than just a general expectation.
Yeah. And so that's kind of, so what you'll see today. And so if you look at the look fors on your sheet there, just looking for, I think it's on the second page maybe for you guys, or the third. Do students give their peers kind, specific, and helpful feedback when working together? Are students mindful? Meaning, can students stay focused with their partners, like an example, Stanima, of each other giving feedback? Are they mindful of each other giving feedback? And what do you notice about the student's first bug versus the second bug after peer feedback lessons? Anything else for the look for us, Jen, that?
I think so.
So that's kind of, just a few things that you might want to look for. There's some specific students too that was really interesting for me, even especially with the Headspace app, just seeing the student like in first, second grade, and knowing that, especially last year, I know one of the students had a challenging year last year, and watching him with the Headspace app, just doing the breathing and stuff, it's been.
Since we did come to an end with the Headspace, I did a little no name kind of thing, just, real quick and dirty. Do you want it? Do you want to continue meditating? I usually just say Headspace. Or do you want to be done with it? And there were 4 kids who wanted to be done with it. and they just said it was too hard to breathe. So that got me thinking, okay, do I tackle that or do I go a different route? But the rest, and I had them write why. And that, I could tell by the handwriting on that student you're talking about, who was a behavior student, really talked about how it helps me when I'm mad, it helps me control my feelings. One of the videos it shows on there, and this is for adults too, it's like it's like you're sitting watching traffic go by. You know, no matter what age you are, you're watching it go by, and then something happens. Are you just going to run into traffic? Or are you going to sit there and maybe acknowledge the thought and maybe think about what your choices are? And so that's just a phrase I use with him now is, looks like you're about to run into traffic. Is that really what you want to do right now? And then he kind of stops and he starts breathing. So, and you know, other kids wrote, you know, some personal things like when I'm at home, when my brother does this, I just go to my room and I just start breathing. And so, yeah, it's been really neat. And I observed Tara Dury do the headspace with the middle schoolers. My structure is quite different than hers is, as far as the way that I meditate is what I brought into my classroom. So it's pretty formal. You're sitting upright. You know, go through all the steps of relax your body, whereas hers is a little more relaxed and students are laying down, they have the option to fall asleep. There's some differences, and I'm not that into meditation to know what should be, but
and the same thing, she gave her students the choice because they were doing like the first 5 minutes at the beginning of class, and I think all of her students voted like we have to keep this for the headspace. So I think they actually purchased the app to continue going.
You're continuing still, but not using the app.
yes, but I don't know, I don't want to force the other 4 to do it, so I don't know how to go about that. Can they read? Then will my readers who love to read want to jump on that band? I don't know how I haven't thought about it or gotten there yet.
Could they specifically say why it was hard to breathe? Did it make them nervous, or they
Right.
just rather do something different, or were they
Yeah.
not able to verbalize that?
And that's what I thought, do I kind of go that route and figure that out? Because to do this lifelong is great. I mean, that's my hope, you know? So then, yeah, because we were at a meditation study where we had to do this. We were in a circle with 12 adults, and it was so much different than doing it on my own. I was nervous. And I was like, I hope I don't cough. I hope I don't. Even though everyone has trained their mind to not think about those sounds, it was still, and as an adult, it was nervous. So do I kind of look at it that way and just talk to them individually? And the 4, and again, I could tell by handwriting, were 3 were ELP students. So I was like, I don't know.
Well, it's 9 o'clock already, so we're going into observe at 9:15. So Jen, if you wanna, I don't know if you feel like you need 15 minutes, or if you guys have questions for Jen before she heads down. So Jen's going to basically give them the purpose for today, of the bug activity, give them their partners, the same partners that they had previously, and then set the stage, and then once we come down, they'll break off into their partners and be giving each other feedback.
All right, by now you should have found a spot. I'm going to go ahead and set the timer for the first part.
Maybe like when you're doing it, you should like make it flat so that you can like add more details and more color. Okay. This. I know what it's next time. Or should we work on I think it would be easier to work on the bus. You want to do, but just write down. I want to people don't actually do it because we're going to get another sheet of paper that you can actually like. Yeah, okay. Close your eyes. Maybe like make little bites on them because mine right now is my plan.
My last thought is this, and this is something else I have to think about, but is your spider fuzzy? That do spiders have a little bit of fuzz? How can you show, and I don't know the answer, how can you show that it's fuzzy? I haven't yet. Can each little blade have two little marks coming out, kind of like little tiny little dashes? What about the body?
Big round, like a circle.
Okay.
Just a little smaller. It's like that's how it gets the pollen. So I like so what about do you think you could make just like what if a few legs like because butterflies have legs so just drag right now tie the line out and then tie the legs. And you don't have to take my advice if you don't want to. If you don't. Okay. How I think of a butterfly is like these wings are perfect, but like the bottom wings are usually smaller and they come down more. They point down. I think that it makes it look a little more realistic. Because right here kind of looks like it's about to hug you and come and hug you. So maybe make the wings a little smaller on the bottom.
Go ahead with your next partner. And you know how fast that time went.
Probably not that big comment. What? Probably not that big. Okay. I really want to dance. It's I really tell me what it reminds you of. I could make the So what else? What should I fix about it? So not do like some screws together. Yeah. Maybe things can be don't want the things to be like things. Like, do you want to draw it like this? They like have two lines on the side. You still want just like for things. That's a
I want to first give you some feedback on the noise level. I felt, if I didn't, I know I heard somebody say Mrs. De La Rosa, but I kind of ignored it, and then I realized, oh, Mr. Johnson and I didn't talk about that student that was supposed to leave. Not a big deal, handled it. Otherwise, I have to tell myself right now, wow, you were really mindful with Sander. I didn't even think about anything else that was going on in the room. How did you feel? What does good mean? Who can tell me something specific, how they felt as far as being mindful with your partner? Not necessarily about their bug, but you as a partner critiquing somebody else's piece. Claire. And isn't that a nice feeling when you feel like they're engaged in what you two are doing? It's like, yeah, this actually means something and they think what I'm doing is important. Stella.
It was a good noise level in here.
I would agree with you. And that helped for me to concentrate with my partner, right?
I feel like
Can you say it nice and loud, Lulu?
I feel like they weren't messing around. I was helping them.
It's hard to help somebody when they are distracted and doing other things, isn't it? Then it's like, well, why am I even here? Why am I even helping you? What's my purpose? Okay. What I'd like you to do now is head back to your desk with your own sheet. I felt I know I heard somebody say Mrs. De La Rosa, but I kind of ignored it, and then I realized, oh, Mr. Johnson and I didn't connect about that student that was supposed to leave. Not a big deal, handled it. Otherwise, I have to tell myself right now, wow, you were really mindful with Sander. I didn't even think about anything else that was going on in the room. How did you feel? What does good mean? Who can tell me something specific, how they felt as far as being mindful with your partner? Not necessarily about their bug, but you as a partner critiquing somebody else's piece. Claire. And isn't that a nice feeling when you feel like they're engaged in what you two are doing? It's like, yeah, this actually means something and they think what I'm doing is important. Stella.
It was a good noise level in here.
I would agree with you. And that helped for me to concentrate with my partner, right?
I feel like
Can you say it nice and loud, Lulu?
I feel like they weren't messing around. I was helping them.
It's hard to help somebody when they are distracted and doing other things, isn't it? Then it's like, well, why am I even here? Why am I even helping you? What's my purpose? Right? You don't value me right now. Oops, timer. Sorry. Okay, we better get rolling. We'll talk some more about that. Okay, now you're going to get about 7 minutes to draw your new bug. Now that time flew, right? That was 7 minutes. I know that you wish you had more time, but you don't. So you have to stay mindful about the time limit. You have 7 minutes after I give you this piece of paper. You can go anywhere in the room. I recommend staying at the table but I'll leave that up to you. Once you get your paper, make sure you have your old bug to look at. Some of you wrote notes, and go ahead and get started.
And again, I'm not getting too frustrated that it's not going exactly how you want. Maybe move on to a different piece and then come back to it. Sometimes if we step away from something, it can help.
Then I can like add more detail, I think, because otherwise it would take a long time.
All right, we've got 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. All right, let's find our way back to our seats. I was Xander's partner. I'll share my thoughts first, and then I'll open it up to you. When I first, you know that I do not like spiders. When I saw Xander's spider, the first thing I said was, whew, your spider does not scare me. I thought it was kind of cute. I think it even smiled. Reminded me of Charlotte from Charlotte's Web, right? But I said to Xander as I looked at his, gave him a high five. I said, you really made some changes that we talked about. But there's one bad thing. Your spider scares me now. Which means what? If it didn't scare me before, but it scares me now. Jack? That did what? Tegan?
He improved it.
That did what? Made it what? Jillian? What did that all do? How did that make it scarier for me? Evan?
That it looked real.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It looks more realistic now. You got it. Anybody else want to share about their bug, their partner's bug? Changes they saw that their partner made that they suggested? Stella?
I did a different color on my butterfly because I didn't like the one I had before.
And some of you added color this time. Color makes a big difference, doesn't it? Drake?
I told my partner to make it a little bit bigger and he did.
Yeah?
I told my partner to make this loose higher.
Oh. Did your partner do that? That make you feel good? Makes you feel good when somebody takes your advice, doesn't it? Sawyer?
I told them to make it a little longer and they did, and when I went over to look at it, it actually looked really better.
Alex? So I guess now I kind of have a little concern. Were you telling your partner, make it bigger? Or were you giving them specific reasons why you think it might look better if they do that? Were you kind? So did you tell them? Maybe it's just easier to tell us as a group. Or was your language a little different when you worked with your partner? Do you remember, Alex? Did you say, you should do this, or what if you did this? Okay. Anna.
I asked my partner if he thought it would look better if it was thinner.
So you were talking about your own? Like you were asking your partner if yours would look better if it was thinner? If theirs would. Okay. Carter.
I asked my partner if he wanted to like put this in a certain spot if he liked it.
Sure. Grace.
My partner told me to make my butterfly more symmetrical and it actually looks like a butterfly.
Butterflies are very symmetrical. Griffin.
My partner told me to add detail and I added detail and then it looked better.
Okay. All right. Well, I felt, looking around, that you were definitely specific and helpful. I wasn't there to listen to you all, but I hope that you were all kind in your word choices that you said too, because remember, the way you say something to somebody can stick with them for a long time, if not forever, right? So we want to make sure that they always remain feeling good about their piece. We're just there to help them improve, right? Like a coach, like a teacher, like a parent, like a friend, okay? All right, give yourselves a pat on the back. Well done.
So we will start with a whip around, and we'll start with round one with the student evidence. And remember, we're not including feedback or suggestions for Jen. We're just kind of going to kind of go with the I saw or I heard, using your notes from your note-taking tool. And then you always have the option to pass if you want. And we'll just kind of go round one, and we can continue to go around since it's kind of a small group. If you feel like it might fit into kind of, if you look ahead to round two, if it might kind of fit in there better, you can use it there as well. So we'll kind of just start, and we don't have to go in order or anything, just whoever wants to start can go ahead and start us. For student evidence, specifically, what did you hear or see regarding kind of our focus question? So I'll kind of remind you, remember the focus question was, does mindful and appropriate peer feedback increase student achievement?
Start. Okay. I saw, or actually I heard, lots of students, they were asking like, do you think it would look better if? Do you want to add this? Or so it was, oh, I guess that's all I can say.
I heard maybe you could instead of always needing to do this.
I heard a lot of that too. I saw some students getting together immediately, even before you gave the directions to the class. And once you gave the directions, then everyone settled in and got right to work.
I heard some students, the student who was drawing a bug almost was kind of like asking for feedback from their other partner because this partner wasn't sure like even how many legs it had.
I saw some students taking notes based on what their partner was saying, and some weren't. Actually, some were erased, like making changes to their bug right there on their paper. That's what they were doing.
That's just what I was going to say.
Sorry.
No, that's not. Kids were engaged. I saw and I heard students talk about their specific bug. One student didn't have any markings on the bug, and the peer editor suggested dots, and then the student said, well, it really kind of depends on what kind of beetle it is. And so the student said, you're right, maybe you could use stripes. And in the final draft, that student had stripes, and it looked a lot more like a beetle.
I heard a group, a peer editor, somebody giving feedback, saying, do you like that idea? You don't have to do everything I say.
I saw you set a timer for each partner, so that way they had equal amount of time to give each other feedback.
I heard kids when they gave suggestions in a kind way, it was always kind. The other would say, okay. But there was never I didn't hear that conversation that you heard, like, why? Or why should we do that? It was just like, okay.
I saw a lot of well-established routine. A seamless move of a clothespin up to a good, students very quietly, methodically going to get their crayons or their pencils. There just is clearly some very set routines that work really well to keep that flow going.
And I saw students when they were working on their second or changing their bug, I didn't see anyone look over at their neighbor and maybe ask what they're doing or even like make any rude comment about anyone's bug.
I heard the particular student we were talking about earlier, the behavior student, he was giving some really great suggestions and I was very impressed.
I noticed on the gallery, walking around, that kids had positive comments. You know, and just positive. And there was little one everywhere he went, It's just a little, it was, it was a positive, not the, oh, but, be mindful and kind.
Yeah, and going off on that, I noticed at that point how engaged the students continued to be. They were truly interested in comparing 1 versus 2. So.
And I saw that the students were really excited to go look at their partners to see if they took their
And when you compared the two, I saw that most kids really did implement their partner's feedback and it was improved for sure.
Any other final ones for round 1? I saw or I heard.
I noticed that when they embarked on the revision, some focused on notes, they had written words, some focused on the sketch and went back and forth, and I saw at least one student simply do it by memory. And so that
I saw one student totally change the buttons.
So just kind of summarizing round 1, just a lot of students getting right to work and established routines, engaged, and then also a lot of positive feedback, comments, making suggestions to their partner's bugs, their peer bugs, and then other students taking those suggestions or that feedback and putting them into their own bugs. For round 2, this is where you're going to be thinking of those implications of learning. So basically, the implications for all students and instruction in general, not just in this classroom, but what does this mean for teaching and learning? So you're using words like based on this, I think, and because I saw, I wonder if, using words like that. So just kind of using your notes, we same kind of fashion with the whip around, whoever can start.
I'm wondering if, based on the setting the time limit, and the kids know that ahead of time, correct, and they knew it was gonna be like 3.5 minutes. So in thinking about taking that into writing, I wonder if that would help the kids be more mindful and on task, knowing it's just for a little bit, rather than this is gonna be forever, that I'm supposed to give this partner feedback.
I found it interesting that as they were comparing their own insects to their partners, I felt like they were really processing, oh, you know, that might be something that I could do. And so I feel like based on that, I think that students can learn not just about their own writing, but by looking at someone else's writing, being able to get some ideas. And that's what I try to do at my level.
Because I saw a student change from a ladybug to a butterfly, I wonder if something not bad happened, but did she look at hers while talking with her peer and like, oh, you know, I don't like that, maybe I want to do, you know, I wonder if the students think, oh, I don't like that anymore, this is what I'd rather do. I don't know.
I don't know if this is appropriate in round two. So, connecting to that, the time limit thing, I'm just wondering if when you are revising writing then, if it would be more effective to do just like one little chunk of their partner's text a day, so it's over the course of several days versus one day.
Based on how much they were willing to write on their own paper and make physical changes, as well as the notes, I think that's going to mean that they'll be more willing to make those edits for their final draft, whatever that looks like. That instead of feeling like what it looked like was fine, they seemed really committed to, you know, that making those changes instead of, like you had said earlier, looking and seeing that nothing was on the page. There was a lot on that first draft.
Yeah, and to kind of go off that, I thought because based on their mindful and appropriate feedback, I think the partners were more willing and wanting to change their bug and add more to it, right?
I'm wondering if this is something that I feel like I'm always telling my kids in the revision and editing process, don't erase anything, like you just, you know, cross out and write above it, or that's the whole purpose of skipping lines, that sort of thing, because I want to be able to see their changes. And so I was just wondering, with some of those kids, instead of taking notes, they were erasing right away and making changes, and so I thought, I wonder if they will be able to see the difference themselves as much from the, you know, number 1 to number 2.
Because my little girl, they were just having a hard time giving suggestions for revision. It was quite a bit of quiet time. And finally the girl who was working on her bug said, do you think I could, and so I think she realized the other person was struggling giving those suggestions because it's not maybe a comfort area for her. And she said, do you think I could do this? And then she just quietly waited. And then I liked that one time, and then she was able to say, yeah, I think you could do that. And I like, and then she offered something else, but that being, the other girl was mindful and caring, how she said, you're not telling me, but just in a kind way, she asked, then she felt more comfortable, because you don't want to say something negative, how do I manage that?
Based on how many times I saw that the notes that a student wrote matched how they made changes, to me that lends itself to the idea that they were being mindful, and I feel like that's a skill that will hopefully transfer, that they were serious about taking in that feedback and then use that to make their improvements.
Any other thoughts for round 2?
I guess I just wonder, because I did hear all very kind and, I mean, it was definitely helpful things too, but then I wonder, how do you get them or push them into that, okay, now how, like how you had said, why should I make it bigger, or that sort of thing, like how do you train them or get them to be thinking of the why behind their suggestion?
Based on kids not asking that question, I was wondering if some of them maybe felt they had to make those choices because they didn't want to question or feel like it might be something, might be viewed as negative to question that, when maybe it's not negative. It's like, well, why would I do that? Were they afraid to ask that question?
The only other thing I would throw out is that, going back to that idea of transferring this knowledge to apply it in a different scenario, I did see some science come through, and students asking now, is that how many legs a butterfly has? And one girl went from basic caterpillar, she decided she was going to do a monarch caterpillar, and so she was very clear about, a green stripe every third stripe, a yellow stripe every third stripe, and skinnier here, and so I feel like pulling in the knowledge that they already have to make their edits even more appropriate was cool. So, and that would be neat to see if they would do that in other realms too. So.
Any other final comments? So just kind of summing up round 2, just kind of wondering if the timer made a difference when setting the timer for the mindfulness, and just kind of thinking about wondering if the student decided, if the feedback, if she decided to change from a bug to a butterfly, thinking if maybe hers was or was not maybe what she should or shouldn't have had on her paper. And then also just the thought of revising maybe a small chunk at a time when thinking of the writing process, if that would make a difference for students. And also just based on the notes that students wrote and the changes they made on the bugs, it seems as that the students were being mindful. And also, how do you push them kind of to the why? And also then applying it to science and other areas with their background knowledge. So for round 3, it's the response from the host teacher, and kind of thinking aloud about what was shared, and how has your thinking changed, and future goal for instruction, and how will the students be assessed. So using words like I feel, from what I heard, I'm thinking, my next step would be, and student learning will be assessed by.
Right. Well, I feel like all of your comments were things I really wanted to respond to because I noticed them all too. Not all. So first of all, the crayfish, Holly and I actually did. Do I have to specify things in order, or can I just? Okay. We did think, oh, maybe we should have them all draw a crayfish, but then we thought, then they're going to take each other's, then they're going to end up probably all looking the same, and they're. With that, a couple things. They were told not to create a new bug of a different species, different kind. And so I'm glad there was only one student who did that, I guess. And I wasn't surprised by who it was. So I think it's just sometimes some kids need. I felt like the direction was specific, but it needed to be repeated a couple more times by me, so probably on me knowing that student. And then, what was the other? There was something else that I was thinking, maybe I'll come back to it.
Maybe the revising one small chunk versus all in one day.
That too, but there was something along the lines of something they did. I'll come back to it. Okay. Well, there's a lot here. The timer, I actually told my students, I told them that they would be timed, mostly for the sake of the learning lab. But while I was saying it, I said, but this is something that I really should have had you do during your revision for personal narrative. I remember my first year teaching 3rd grade. I think there was a group who revised and edited in the same period. And I at the end of the day, I was like, that was not okay by any means. So I like the idea of, I no longer allow anybody to do that. I feel like they haven't given specific feedback if they can do that all in a half hour with both papers. And that would just happen once my first year with a couple people. So now, I do feel pressed for time sometimes with our units, and just a time issue. But I do feel like if this is really an important skill that's going to go throughout their whole life. I mean, some of these kids, I have kids in my class who want to be authors. They want to write their own books. This is a big skill. We talk about how authors, they draft for years. It's not one draft and you're done, and they're getting feedback for years from people. And so, like the idea of chunking it, Jackie, into like maybe pages, over the span of a couple days. And so I guess prioritizing, I realize time is an issue and this unit needs to be done by here, but what kind of quality work do I want out of this? Thank you for the comments on the routine and getting started right away. Karen had asked if the students were always that quiet, and I said during independent time, they really are that quiet. The feedback part, when I was asking at the end for the feedback and they were still really quiet and it was kind of like their hands were slowly coming up, I want you to know that the second you left, they were like totally in their element, and there were kids like, I am so proud of myself. Oh my gosh, I'm proud of myself too. Look at my bug. And I was looking at Miss Tobias and then Kylie like, what? It was an immediate, once the door shut, completely talking about everybody getting up out of their seats, talking about their bugs. And I was like, well, that's just a comfort thing, of course. But it was neat for me to see, because I was sitting there, I thought, or standing there asking them the questions, I thought, well, okay, has this been effective? But then it was just affirmation that, yeah, it was. As I wish you could have seen that. So your comment about being kind but not always specific, I feel like that was the hardest lesson we taught. And I just think we only taught specifically that lesson one day, and then we referred to it often. That was really hard for me to teach. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously I haven't done very good job of it in the past, but even being mindful of it now, it was really hard to teach. Like, I feel like there has to be specific lessons leading up to the specific lesson, you know, and that probably goes into really fine lessons on talking about synonyms and antonyms and hooks, you know, talking more about the writing process and getting more into creative words and dialogue, you know, getting into really specific areas like that. But I was hoping that more kids would at least give a reason, especially because before you came in, that's something that I specified. Make sure when you are giving your partner an idea or, you know, something that you might want to change, that you give a reason for it, and there's a purpose. The partner I was working with, on one of the ideas I gave, he kind of gave his little defense on why he did it. And so it was neat. I felt like the communication piece was really cool, and how me as a teacher, he was still able to, like, not stand up to me, but, you know, to hold his own, like, well, I did this because da-da-da-da. It's like, oh. And then, you know, of course, I complimented him on that. But that's what it was. It was a student who you thought maybe she changed the bug because maybe someone, you know, we don't know why she changed the bug, right? Like, I can make my inference based on it's a directional thing, and she thought, oh, that bug's cooler. I want to do that bug instead, and that's what I hope. But as far as the kindness piece, I would hope that isn't the case.
Oh, I don't think so.
But it could have been. It could have been. And that's where this kind of, we haven't talked about this, but this brings me a little more to your level, which is why I feel like kindness seems easier to teach. And I wonder, is it easier because it's been an expectation since they were little to be kind, to talk kind? But is it something that still needs to be taught? I told my class the same story about how when I was in high school, I was a freshman and I had an essay. It was time to revise papers, and my best friend was who I got paired up with. We probably got to pick our partners to pair up with. And I was really proud of my paper. And she took one look at it and goes, oh my gosh. I don't know where to start, Jen. And no joke, to this day, every time I'm with her, I feel this much less than her. I always feel like I'm going to say, and she's my best friend, and I feel like from high school, and I feel like I'm going to say something the wrong way or not use high enough vocabulary for her, or, I mean, there's totally like an insecurity that has followed me. And so I feel like the kindness piece does really have to be taught every year, every unit, every time that you're giving peer feedback. And whether it's writing or science or what, you know, basketball, whatever the case is, if you're going to give somebody, you know, a piece of your mind, it needs to be a kindness piece, you know, and not come off as bringing somebody down, I guess.
And we did tell the students that they didn't have to accept the feedback. Like, they could say, well, like, they could challenge the feedback. Why do you think I would need to change that?
Right.
Like, you don't just have to do what your partner says.
Yeah. Because you feel good about what you've done already. So don't lose that. You know, there might be something that you feel really strongly about that maybe they don't understand. Okay, talk about how to maybe improve that point that you're trying to get across instead of completely changing it. Let's see.
What about being able to see the difference when erasing changes? Maybe using
Yes,
like a different
that was
color or something even.
That was the other one. They were instructed not to touch their
Yeah.
original bug.
Uh-huh.
They could take, you know, if they want to take notes or whatnot, but they were not to make changes on the original bug.
Just like when I tell them writing, don't erase it,
Uh-huh.
but they still
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Or they totally cross it out.
right. And I did see a kiddo doing that, and I oh, well, this is how will we be able to compare these? I won't even know which is which. Somebody else brought up they weren't, when it got to the independent time, they weren't looking around at their neighbors or talking, and they weren't, but when I got to two students, they had the same bug, and they looked a lot alike,
Yeah.
and I was like,
and I looked up at the document camera to see, were they partners? And they weren't, and I thought, how interesting. And that made me feel like, okay, so from an 8 or 9-year-old perspective, themselves and their partners, they think that a spider looks like this. And how cool that they both came to this same conclusion. You know, I thought that was actually really neat. But
Something I noticed just that I thought was interesting too was how a lot of the students, some had like lists made with bullet points. So I don't know if you guys, specifically teach the lists, and some had more, notes and then kind of labeled, but just the different way they decided like to take notes.
On some of them, and I feel like it was a time constraint, because I felt like they would have produced something much more different than their first bug with more time. For instance, Carter and Emma were 2 kids that stick out, that I felt like they were really just focused on one piece because they wanted to get it just right. And I thought, well, if they had like an hour, I wonder what this would look like. They were so, they knew what they wanted to change, and they were doing it, they just didn't have the time to do it. Do you know what I mean? I thought, while I was watching them, like, that is really cool to watch them just work through that, because they just look like scientists to me. They really did. It looks like, I know this needs to be here, and this, oh, no, it just needs to be a little bit more this way. And Emma kept erasing, and finally I just said, why don't you move on to another part and come back to it. So that was kind of fun to see.
And they had the same amount of time as the first bug as the second.
One student did ask me, can we look at a picture while we do it? And I said no. And I think that was hard too. I don't even want to show you what my bug would look like if I do one from memory. But then it's okay now. But that's like writing a realistic fiction paper, a story that's never happened. You're not looking at anything. You're just using all your prior knowledge. But then here's this person to help you, right? Help you improve it, and they can give you input.
And that's what we did talk about with the crayfish. They would have more background knowledge because, like, the book talks about the pinchers and everything like that. But then, since they have all the background knowledge, would they all look the same pretty much?
Since we've actually looked at every structure of the crayfish and talked about it and named it, then.
Or at least maybe they should.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So then, the question of how do you push them to the why?
Well, you don't have to have an answer.
Yeah, just that is a question, yeah. And maybe you guys kind of, that's kind of maybe the going on to the round 4, kind of that's, maybe that does move us on to round 4 for next steps. Do you feel like you're ready to move on to?
I feel like just a little piece of it right now. So I wondered, okay, if I did this activity again, would I want it to be in the first 30 days, or do I like it where it's at? And I think I like it where it's at. I think it's more effective now, because it's right, what's more specific. Whereas I feel like the first 30 days, you're reviewing big concepts, and I think then just differentiating revision and editing is so important. And even in their first paper, really just identifying this is not where you're talking about punctuation, convention, spelling. This is where you're improving the wordage, right? And so I think now in Unit 2, or a little further into the year, now we're ready to get, using that term, more specific again.
And Liz, their first 30 days is where they're like laying out the routines of the writing process. So, and you're really building the community of learners in your classroom. So you're still building the trust and.
can I ask a question? How in the world are you fitting in all these additional lessons?
Oh, well, yeah, that's been hard.
Like thinking,
Fridays
oh my
are
gosh,
nice.
all the lessons that you would have had to.
Right.
add.
Yeah. So my morning meeting helps. That's where I do anything to do with growth mindset is done there. At the beginning of writing is where we do the headspace and where we talk about mindfulness. So that's there. And these specific lessons on how to be kind, helpful, specific, wrapping it up, those have all been at odd times throughout, whenever we have a window, Fridays, Wednesdays, cut genius hour short. Yeah.
2:30, 10 o'clock.
Right. So, if this were something, well, this is something I will do again. I will probably, I want it to be more concrete, like a unit, and for it to feel like, I like the growth mindset and the headspace being in those areas. I like that throughout the day because that goes with everything, not just writing. But as far as the unit, I like to spend a straight week on it, and I don't know how. I don't know. Maybe it's during the read aloud time. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's a universal
Challenge.
challenge.
Isn't that
How
always
do
the
you fit
challenge?
it
Yeah.
all in?
Yeah.
And what do you
Right.
sacrifice to add something?
Right.
Going back really quickly to that whole why thing, I wonder if it would be possible to model for the students to make a kind specific suggestion, but add that because. So I wonder if you could add a few more dots, because when I've seen a ladybug, that's what I've seen.
A place that I've started with that, you think about how are you good, right? Is our morning meeting. I started this at the beginning of the year where we give a morning greeting and it's a firm handshake, eye contact, you ask how they are, but you have to ask them a question. And so we draw sticks. So if I drew Holly's name, I go find her, I give her a handshake. Hi Holly, how are you? She says good, I'm good. And then you have to ask a question. What are you most excited about for today? Or what did you do last night? And so I'm and when sometimes I'll look over and I'll see they're kind of stumped, like, what should I ask? Because they know not to be repetitive either. You can't always ask, what'd you do last night? And so I kind of find that this is the same thing. This is like a step up, and I'm seeing the same beginnings of don't know how to do it. It's easy to just say, this is what I think. But there needs to be lessons taught on what are some options and what is some terminology or phrases I use to explain myself. I think of exit slips in math. We give a student maybe a computation problem, and then we ask, how did you know that was correct? Or, I can't think of one off my head, but
So you can just explain how you
explain how you got your, and it's hard, it's very difficult for students. And in the colors class that I took with you, I talked about a student who was very high achieving, who would just write every time, I just knew it, remember that? And it was like, I kind of came to the point where I was thinking, okay, do I keep trying to get him to explain himself, or do I who is this for? He knows it. Is he explaining it for me? Because he doesn't want to, you know what I mean? You kind of, yeah.
And I also think it could relate to the picture of the day, the inferencing, I infer because.
Yes, absolutely.
That's hard too,
Yeah.
that because part for students.
We use templates, it started because a former student of mine who was at Iowa used this book called They Say, I Say, and he brought it home at Christmas time, and he said, I think you could use this for comp and for some other things. And so I use it in lots of different elements, and I think you can do that as well. This Learning Lab template, this has, based on blank, I think, here we are as adults using these. There really isn't anything juvenile about using templates to help get people to form what they're thinking.
Right.
So.
Right.
And I think it's even just part of our regular conversation, maybe even our own adult modeling, where we don't always explain our thinking. Like I'm just thinking, one of the things I do in my room is warm fuzzies, is little compliments. And I've told the kids, when you write a compliment to them, you can't just say, you're a good friend or whatever. I want you to say specifically what makes them a good friend. That they struggle with that, you know, so,
Right.
because do we really model that necessarily? You know, we'll say, oh, I really think that she's a great person or she's a good teacher, but are we explaining the why
I
behind
think
it?
you need to actually chart it out so they can see it visually
Yeah.
instead of just hear it. They need to
That
see it,
too.
and then maybe gradually, oh, maybe part of it goes away because, oh, I need more space. I'm gonna just take a chunk off and fold it under, and eventually it just goes away. But after they see it and they heard it, you know, you don't wanna just say it. They need to keep seeing it someplace to look back, like all of our posters or your posters you made, or your bulletin boards.
And I think that's my next step, Karen, when we're getting into the revision part of the realistic fiction papers, to have examples written out, a place they can look. Yeah, I feel like the writing manual does that with the model read-alouds. Sometimes those are a little maybe too deep, or you know, too many words maybe. So yeah, creating one, just pulling a student's paper and just saying, here, what could we say? What could we say about this? And just practicing it more. Yeah.
So that leads us to round 4 for next steps. So I'll just give you guys like 30 seconds. If you want to just jot down kind of what would be your next steps. If you kind of look, there's a few different things maybe listed. I think it's on the second page maybe some bullet points that might help for next steps you might take. Maybe something you need help with, something you would like to try. I realize my students. 1 or 2 aspects from the observation that I could use in my instruction are a goal I could set for myself. An aha moment. Is anyone willing to share theirs?
I learned a lot. I was so looking forward to this, and it not at all surprised that I reaped some benefits. I have 3, and I'll try to be brief. One of the things I loved that I don't do enough is comparing the revision. You know, they'll go through the peer editing, but then the student never gets to see how those changes were made. And one of my favorite days, and the students' favorite days, is when we have a writing celebration and they all get to read at least part of, if not a full essay. And sometimes we don't have a lot of time for that, but I've had students have told me that's one of their favorite things. And so there's a lot of, rightfully so, pride that goes along with that. And so if I could, even with every paper that I assign, say, okay, pick 1 paragraph, what was it like before, what was it like after, and not even just the peer editor, but kind of do a gallery walk and let other people see that. I think that would be really
Can
helpful.
I comment on that really quick? Is that okay to do? I
Yes, because I saw that today. I saw how proud kids were that their partner actually took their advice and they saw it. It was like, oh my gosh, like, it almost made me feel like they have more value to themselves. You know what I mean? Like it, and I think in writing, then it gives maybe a person who doesn't think they're a writer, and then a person, you know, their partner is somebody who is a writer in their eyes, and they use my idea. Oh wow, well maybe I am a writer.
And also just that writer, him or herself, being able to show off. Look at what I did to make changes that made this a better essay, or better, whatever the product is. Two other quick things. I might try timing my students. You know, we have a peer editing day, it's 47 minutes. They have usually some kind of a checklist. They go off into their own little areas and I step in and I look. But as far as, sometimes they don't seem like they may be as on task, and your kids were totally on task. So I could see saying, okay, we're gonna do it for this. And then finally just maybe doing smaller chunks instead of, you know, let's look at each other's 3-page essays, let's look at the first page, or let's focus on, if it's a more structured, maybe the first body paragraph, if it's more of a informative or argumentative paper. So those are very valuable takeaways for me. Thank you.
Or I wonder, just thinking, if even while they're writing their first draft, you know, you give everybody the first how long, and then the next day you say, we're gonna pair up and revise what we've already got, and then maybe that would even improve where they go with their paper. Like, oh, I wonder if this character should do this, or what were you thinking this character was gonna feel like during this?
I find.
Yeah.
Okay, just thinking about writing specifically. I've tried to give them the time to write, and then when we're like at the editing or the revising, I guess the editing more. Just kids stopping, they've worked so long, then having them share out, this is what it said, this is how I changed it. And have some more time, but then I'm not allowing, or you run out of time, that more time. Now let's go back. Wow, I heard people doing this, and I need to remember to tell why. And then going back and giving them a couple more minutes to see if they could use that model to change their own writing, because I'm finding that I need to help my students be more mindful of the time they have. And I do set a lot of timers, but I'm thinking, how can I help them become more mindful of that time, because our time is so short. And then, how do you find that time? I've tried to swap my reading and my writing sometimes. I say, today we're gonna do this, so now model it. Now, during your small group rotation, I'm working around, you're gonna partner up with somebody and do this. And that was not very effective, because they just weren't quite ready to move on their own without somebody moving in to maybe redirect. So I think maybe second semester, they might be more ready for something like that.
Something important you said there, Karen, that I've learned as a teacher is, I think always as a writer, I never wanted to be interrupted, and I don't like to be interrupted. But what I found as a teacher, you know, especially with all the different things that you're asking them to include in their paper, I've, you know, in previous years I've waited until the end to share, which is also what the manual says to do. But I love the idea of what you're saying of, while they're writing, so much time has passed, come back, share something out, because students really do benefit from that. I really noticed that some are even maybe on the wrong track, and so it kind of gets them back on track.
Or for the kids that are stuck.
Right.
You're starting to hear, it's like, oh, that's,
Yes.
I didn't get what that's.
So then
what she
you haven't
meant.
wasted a whole 20 minutes of them sitting there stuck. Because as you're walking around with, you know, talking to kids, you're missing kids too, inevitably.
So I'm reading John Hattie's book, Visible Learning and Literacy, and they said for feedback to be beneficial, it has to be specific, but it also has to be timely, and it has to be, by timely they mean it can't be at the end of the paper, because by then the student or adult already has it like, well, this is kind of already how I wanted and the ideas I had in my head. So if it could be at that time, then they haven't really formed those ideas yet. So it would be more timely, I
I'm
guess.
thinking like the first 2 minutes of class. And when thinking writing, I maybe only have 20 minutes someday instead of that half an hour. But if I took 2 minutes, let's review what that looked like. Who can share out and put it under the camera. And I guess the other thing was a goal I have is to, besides just with all the lessons at the beginning of the year on growth mindset, how can I move more into the meditation and the mindfulness during the morning meetings instead of just the yoga and other things, but how could I maybe change that to tweak it to make them more mindful? Instead of it's just something we do to make it, you know, meaningful.
I really do like the thought of making anchor charts of the revision process, just because, yeah, like I'll model with my own piece how to, you know, maybe I should change this wording, or, oh, you know, this part really doesn't belong here, or whatever. So I model it for them, but then it's gone. Like I just have it under the document camera, and then I take it away and say, okay, now you go do it, you know? So, yeah, why wouldn't we make an anchor chart of that and have it posted so that they can, you know, you can even remind them, see how in my piece or in some random piece, whatever, how we changed the wording or how we took this part out because it really didn't fit, or, you know, just for them to have that to refer to, I think would be, and maybe even an anchor chart for all four, like an example of a paragraph where you took something out, an example of a paragraph where you added more detail, you know, like where you had several different anchor charts.
Can't you see some kids getting really excited to have their piece be the example that you maybe are gonna, so they're gonna work even harder on that skill.
Right.
Have theirs be part of that anchor chart to model at this age, maybe, I don't know.
Well, and I
High school
just
kids
saw,
would be that anxious to have theirs posted.
I saw a post that you could, something you could add on to that would be have the kids have a post-it note with their name, and then they put onto the anchor chart, this is what I did today, or if it were steps, like I'm on this step today, you know, and so there'd be several kids who are still pre-writing and several kids, and then they can move that, you know, where they are, and then they're just kind of showing where they are. So.
And then I really need to use that timer thing. I just think I'm one that struggles with time as it is, but the day that we do peer revising, I will just, you know, it seems like I don't set a timer, so then they're working for a while, and then I'll just say, if you haven't switched partners yet, now it's time for the other partner to start sharing their piece. But I'm not really looking at the equity of it at all, and then it's right up till, you know, writing is right before recess for us, and so, yeah, some kid maybe got 10 minutes of time to share their piece, and then the other kid got 3 minutes, and they looked up and saw it's almost recess time, so then their mindfulness was out the door, or, you know, like, so then that's, I don't know, I just think the timer would really be helpful for me.
It would almost be helpful for me too when I'm doing one-on-one conferencing with writing pieces. Cause I've spent, oh my gosh, I spent all this time with you, a little bit less with you, a little bit less, and I didn't get to all of you, sorry. You know, so then, yeah. And then they know it's fair. Then they, I mean, I don't know if they think that or not. I would assume that they think, well, she worked a lot on her paper with her.
Yeah.
Do they come with a concern? Like, I'd really like you to help me with my action verbs or my specific detail, because that might help focus.
Like a goal almost?
There in the benchmark curriculum, there is like a little form, and they're like strips, and they can fill them out, and then you know, they can write like those. And I did that one year, but then I felt like the kids that really, really needed my help weren't filling them out. They were the ones at their desk, just stuck, just sitting there stuck. So, but that's not to say that those strips and those kids filling them out, that I should have abandoned that by any means. I just don't know a solution of how, you know, do I keep the couple kids that can't seem to move and you know, you're gonna be here at this table with me? You know, maybe that's a better solution than.
We did see a peer feedback video where when they were meeting with their partner, and this was just kindergartners, they had Post-it notes and they had to write on the Post-it notes from the peer feedback one of the goals that the partners gave them. Then they wrote that on the Post-it note as their goal to work on through their writing. Like one was using capital letters. And so that was their goal for their writing, and that was their focus for their writing. So
I used to co-teach writing with an ELL teacher in West Des Moines, and she was a really awesome writing teacher, but we, for every unit, would make like a peer feedback form, and so the writer first would write 2 specific questions that they wanted their partner to be looking for, you know, like is my hook effective? Do I have enough sensory details, or that sort of thing? And then they would meet, and then the partner would be looking for those specific things, and then they would have to write the answer to their questions down at the bottom of the paper. And then when you got your form back, then you had to fill out my next steps are. But I tried that with my 3rd graders, and I think I just, like, I didn't do an effective enough job of really modeling it, and then there's the time, and so I was like, well, try this again the next unit, but it just wasn't really, kind of lost its effect.
Right. There does need to be some kind of checklist, so you've got some kind of checklist, right? Or some, I mean, they're following protocol. I do feel like even if it's 3 things, it's something that is like right there for them to see, like, have we done this? Have we done this? Yeah. For sure.
any other, we have about 3 minutes.
Well, I guess I realized my students do not know how to do writing feedback. And I feel like that's where we struggle with writing too, but I also am wondering if like, because I kind of let them partner up as they move their clips down the, so if so-and-so are done, they're revising partners. But sometimes it's like, I feel like my strong readers always end up with each other, and I feel like I need to be better at just saying, we all need to be done, and I'm, for right now, choosing partners, because I feel like my little ones get stuck and they're always stuck in the middle. So I don't know, did you choose partners, or did they? Obviously this isn't like a writing
No,
piece.
less and less do I let students choose their own partners. So I feel like more and more and more, everything we do is so critical. So I, just to keep it not on their shoulders and not on mine, I just draw sticks almost all the time. And it's the luck of the draw. And knock on wood, it's very rarely do I get into that situation where I know exactly what you're talking about. Where it's the high kid with the high kid and the low kid with the low kid, and then it's me with the low kids, or you know, whatever.
Or they don't get any feedback really from their partner because they don't know what
Right.
to get feedback on.
So
Yeah.
do you do like high, match to the middle, and then
I
just
draw-
kind of work
I
down, or just always random?
Draw them right in front of them. And I hope for the best. And for the most part, I get pretty, sometimes I'm like, oh, if there was a way I could have maybe somehow changed that sneakily, you know, but, plus I feel like it teaches them to work with all different temperaments too. You know, they're working with, oh my gosh, you guys, I have a little girl in my classroom who, I listened to her. She's pretty high. The kid was a real struggling writer during their, what were they doing? Oh, no. What was it? I don't know what piece we were doing. We were writing something, and she was giving him feedback, and I was this is before I started any of these lessons, the feedback she was giving him, she would say, well, I want to ask you, what were you thinking your idea was going to be about? And there'd be a long pause. And there were many times where I thought about stepping in. And she said, well, but I think Mrs. De La Rosa was sort of expecting that we would do it where we would have this. And he would go, oh, I didn't know that. And she goes, that's okay. I think we can take what you have and we can make it. And it was amazing. And I was like, because like I said, there was one time where I literally almost was like, okay, I'm expecting too much out of her. You know what I mean by having her continue this? But it was really, and I wasn't watching, but I was definitely listening, and it was neat, really neat to see. It was neat for her not to be like, well, that isn't how we were supposed to do it. Mrs. De La Rosa, he didn't follow the direction. Even in a kind way. She didn't come to me immediately. She really worked it out with him, and he was able to hang in there with her. So that was neat.
Do you think, did you say Kate?
No, you guys aren't touched with that.
When do you think, like I know you start with growth mindset, and we were all looking for different things and trying it. When would you maybe start the headspace and more of these mindfulness lessons with the kindness and being helpful? Would you wait and just gradually work on the others and making them more aware of themselves?
I think
I
I don't know if I'd make them separate anymore, I think they go together. I think I'd say, you've heard this term, growth mindset? Mindfulness. Let's talk about how you have to have both. I think I would just start using them both together. And, meditating, like you said, was really hard at first. It was hard for me at first. There are still days where it's hard. And you have to have a growth mindset to be mindful. Okay, I know I struggled with this yesterday. I know that I got distracted, and okay, today I am just going to try harder to focus on my breath. I'm just gonna, and like I had a kid one day who said, because we were talking about how do you focus on breathing? That's kind of hard. And he goes, well, and this was like after 5 times, and he goes, well, what I do is I like imagine my tongue, and then he went to this, I think you were there, and I imagine like my breath thing like rolling off my tongue. And I'm like, yes, that's it. That's exactly it. And that's actually when I first started and I was struggling, I just started like envisioning the breath going in my mouth, down my throat. And it is, but you have to have a growth mindset to even, because if you're like those 4 kids who are like, this is too hard, or this is boring, or I think one kid used the word boring. Well, are you giving it your best shot? You know what I mean? Let's start there. Do you have a growth mindset towards this, or when I say, okay, it's time for headspace, are you immediately shut down and like, oh, I don't like,
Because I think with kids moving, they compartmentalize everything, and how do you carry it over? And I told Jen, one of her students was in my room, we're working on fluency, doing a reader's theater, talking about intonation and how would Francine from Arthur, it's like, oh my goodness, just listening, how would you think she would say a line that, she said, and of course I'm thinking, oh, she sounds like a bully. Oh, she has a fixed mindset. And this is what it is, I thought, I was proud of him because I know he struggles, but to carry it from one place to another place, out of context, out of room, to think of a different character in a text, not just the person that's bothering me at recess.
right.
And just, I thought that was really interesting to carry that. And you think, oh, they're never going to get it. It's just like, it's seeping in, and we have to remember, it's not, they're going to have it next week because I've taught it. And it's going to take some of the kids years.
Right.
So how long does it take us to be comfortable with something like this? And us changing our habits. when things aren't maybe modeled for them consistently.
So I would say same with like yoga or anything else, as long as you're comfortable teaching it and modeling it, I say you just start whenever, you start at the beginning of the year, start wherever you are once you're there.
Do you think you, like I'm wondering if I started this headspace thing, you said you had done it on your own first, but I'm wondering, could I try it with them and say, this is new for me too, and we're gonna be doing this, you know, we're learning
I
it
did
together,
that,
like
I
I'm
did that
thinking,
with yoga,
that
they
would be
knew it was
kinda
new for
fun
me and
to-
and
yeah.
I would express that, gosh, this part was kind of hard for me today
Yeah.
because I felt this way. And oh yeah, and then they started sharing but nobody wanted to share because it was like, this was new for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I felt kind of strange because I knew other people were doing this and I felt like, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
And it's just, for them to see that it was hard for me,
Yes.
made it
The
easier for
kids
them.
like to see the teacher be vulnerable
Yeah,
to.
that would be fun.
I don't know, actually. I don't know. Because technically your eyes are closed, so you don't see anything anyway. You don't see your teacher, you're not watching your teacher, you're
But
not.
see, like yoga, their eyes were up.
Right, that's different. I don't know. Personally, I would not feel comfortable doing that.
Letting them know it was new for you.
Not so much, I let them know.
Oh,
This is
but you
new
were
for
doing
me,
it.
but I tested it out a little bit, you know? I mean, I'm by no means no expert, but I didn't like delve in right with them. I don't know if I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that because meditation was really hard for me at first. And so I felt like I could kind of take all my weaknesses and the roughness, and it kind of sped things along for the students because of I'd already done like the dirty work and I knew how to be a better model, maybe. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense, but for
That's
myself
it's
it was
10 day.
yeah.
Try it on your own.
And it's not like, and even if you only did it twice or 3 times on your own before you started it, I think you'd feel better about going into it.
Okay.
And I think they would have more confidence in it. Because if it's new to you and it's new to them all on the same day, they might be like, okay, is she going to tell us this was weird? You know what I mean? Because it feels weird and it feels awkward. And so, I don't know.
I'm gonna stop because we're like about 10 minutes over. So thank you guys for coming today. If you guys have any other questions, you guys can obviously follow up with Jen. But thank you guys so much for participating.
It was awesome.
Yes, and thank you,
Thank
Jen, for
you.
hosting. So
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Attending.
Thank you so much.